Ladies and gents, welcome back to another video of Ghost in the Shell. Today, I'm going to be talking about recoil management and bullet deviation because these are very critical aspects in how the game actually functions and works. And essentially, if you want to be good, or if you want to be able to actually shoot things at a distance effectively, you need to know basically how to mitigate both of those main elements. Now, it's actually not really that hard. I mean, it's just as simple as what we call tap firing. And it's basically a term that everybody, especially in the CSGO or just Counter-Strike realm, everybody refers to it as tap firing. And basically all it is you're just clicking your mouse, tap firing repeatedly, to basically keep the weapon on a point of reset. So basically, you tap fire the first bullet all the time, no matter what game you're playing, even if there's drastic bullet deviation, the first bullet will always go where the reticle is pretty much pointed. Except for when you're on the move in this game, which is kind of like you can see being demonstrated here. The bullets don't always land right where the reticle was pointing because I'm moving. But if I'm stationary, bullet always goes where you're pointing, right? Then it resets. Grouping is extremely tight. Bullets are pretty much landing in the same spot. It's very, very accurate. Now, if I'm going to be tap firing repeatedly, you'll actually see that even if I'm doing a slow tap like this, the grouping stays relatively tight, and then if I go even faster, it's still exceedingly tight. Now, if I'm firing like quick bursts, it's still decently tight, but it's not as accurate as just simply tap firing like that. One thing I'm going to demonstrate now is the recoil itself and the actual spread of the bullets, which you'll see both illustrated in the same demonstration. So basically, every single weapon in the game has its own predetermined recoil pattern, very similar to that of Counter-Strike, where basically every single time you fire the weapon, it has a very distinct pattern. In fact, this game is very reminiscent of that because the weapons climb in a very similar fashion. You'll actually see this aim point go up, kind of go right, and then left, and then right. And you'll see it's always exactly the same. The difference, however, is that if you actually pay attention to the tracers, you'll see the bullets are actually flying and deviating all over the place. Now, if you guys have been, around my channel for a while, you'll know exactly how I feel about bullet deviation like that, especially when it comes to cone of fires and, crosshair spread and whatever, because, well, that's not how weapons function in reality, and that stuff kind of annoys the living shit out of me. It's not so much of an issue in games like this, where it's a competitive, arcade, fast-paced shooter, but when you have elements like that in hardcore tactical shooters or military simulators, then yes, I'm going to absolutely rip your game apart and criticize the ever-loving shit out of it for having bullet deviation like that, because bullets do not magically curve out of your barrel. They go straight. They fly straight out of your barrel. Now, part of that actually makes me think that maybe the game, now this is just kind of like a personal observation and opinion, it could actually be more skill intensive if they just got rid of bullet deviation altogether, because that way, learning how to control the recoil will actually pay off, much like in Counter-Strike. Because in this game, you can control the recoil all you want, but the recoil pattern is always different. So if I go and shoot at this wall over here, and just try to control it, or actually, even if I just let it go, hang on. Even if I just let it fire off on its own, you'll see where all the rounds are splashing, right? You'll see the grouping, where all the bullets hit. Pay really close attention to where the rounds are actually impacting. And I do it again, they'll always land in a different spot. Like, for instance, that one landed on the far left. Let's see how far it goes this time. Now they were you can see that they landed a lot more up here than last time where it was down here. So the spread is completely random. So no matter how well you can memorize the actual recoil of the weapon and even try to keep that sight, that dot on the target, it makes no difference. Like, even there, as you can see, like, I was just shooting at this guy, and then I readjusted my aim, aiming for center mass, but the bullet deviated, striking him in the head, which is basically luck. So there's a lot of luck in this game, which could lead to some frustration to a lot of people. Because nobody likes luck in skill-intensive games, right? If you're playing a skill-based game, it should be your precision, your skill that actually dictates your hits on target, not so much as random bullet deviation. Now, Blacklight Retribution actually suffered from this very issue. In the beginning of Blacklight Retribution, it had the exact same similar system as this, but the recoil was random. So it was even worse, alright? Like, Blacklight Retribution was the worst for that, because not only did it have random recoil patterns, the bullet spread was also random, so there was absolutely no way you can master a weapon. Like, it was actually impossible. That it was literally the bane of casualized game experiences in a shooter. Like, that's why the people that came over from Tango Down, including myself, just hated Blacklight Retribution at first, because it was like, what the hell is this? Like, the recoil is random, and the spread is random. So there's no way to be able to, like, you know, figure out what the weapon's gonna do, because it's always different. And eventually, especially now, they finally fixed it where basically there is no random bullet deviation, there's only recoil. And the recoil is somewhat predictable, but also random. So it's a lot better than it was, but I mean, I would rather take the system that's here, which, instead of the initial Blacklight Retribution system, where the recoil pattern is always the same and predictable, but the bullet spread is random. It's better than, you know, having both of them being completely random where you'll never know how the weapon behaves. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but basically that's kind of just how it works in this game. So tap firing, again, as you can see, is just the most effective way to keep shots on target, because you'll see that the stream of bullets that are actually exiting are straight. Like, if you pay really close attention to the actual tracers, you'll see that they come out very straight, even though I'm tapping really quickly. If you, like, you know, fire bursts, they're still relatively straight because the weapon will reset after each shot. But of course, if you're just going to spray, hold long bursts, the deviation and recoil will get excessive. Which you obviously don't want. Unless you're within, like, close range. Like, if you're literally within a range like this, then you can, yes, you can kind of, like, fire bursts and hit targets effectively. It's not really a big deal. Especially if you're this close, you might as well just... Like, now, it may have seemed to some people there that I was just holding the trigger down and cycling between the targets, but you'll see that it took a little bit longer there. Because this time I was holding it down. But if I'm... Hang on, I need to get a full magazine. If I'm taking a brief pause, so I'm holding the trigger down, letting go as I cycle, holding the trigger down, letting go as I cycle, holding the trigger down. You do this really fast. And basically, it makes it almost seem like you're firing in fully automatic, but you're actually not. And a lot of people kind of accuse you, which has happened to me, which is why I made a video, of hacking just because doing something as simple as that can look like you have no recoil, or you're like holding the trigger down, it's fully automatic. But in reality, you're not holding it fully automatic. You're letting the weapon reset every time you re-engage the next target. The last thing you want to do, though, in a situation like that, is kind of try to tap fire each target in close proximity. Tap firing is more efficient for targets that are a distance away. Far enough where the enemy will think that firing in longer bursts will be effective, but you know better, so you'll be like tapping and just, you know, dropping targets left and right. But they'll be trying to like fire in bursts, or even they'll panic and fire in fully automatic and try to like hope they can kill you. But if you're within close proximity, chances are whoever's spraying is going to win. Because at this range, even if you're like, you know, letting the weapon go, like, the deviation will not be enough to basically make it so you're going to be ineffective. You might as well just, you know, fire in a long burst until the target is dead. So going on to the whole recoil pattern thing, again, I'll display the M4's recoil pattern. Always consistent. Climbs up. It kind of like curves up and then goes left. Now, if I had a bigger magazine, I have no idea if it would stay left or if it would slowly cycle back right. I don't know how that works. Because the M249, for example, it'll climb up like this, go right, come back a little bit left from the center, and then go to the center and stay there for the rest of the box magazine. So you'll fire off like this, like tight, long right, moderate left, slightly to the center, and then it'll hold, which I'll demonstrate right now. So taking the M249, this is the stock M249, by the way. So again, it'll climb up, go right, left, stop in the center. And then it stops. The difference though is that you'll see the bullets are like spraying all over the place because there's bullet deviation, so of course you're not going to be effective doing this. But again, as you can see, like every weapon, I'm going to do it again, it's always the same recoil pattern. Now, if there was no random bullet deviation, one could literally master this weapon. Like, the initial burst would be obviously kind of hard to manage, but then after that, it would be just a joke because it stays in the center, so you just hold it down and basically just slice people in half, which would be, like, just hilariously awesome. But basically, it's easier to see just how it works with the actual grouping impact that you can actually visualize and see yourself. So again, it climbs up like this, it curves to a long right, comes back to the center but a little bit left, then centers again and holds, and then towards the end of the magazine, towards the end of the box, it'll actually kind of a little bit kick left sometimes. So I mean, that's how it works. That's how the M249 operates. It's always the same. Of course, you can just, you know, tap fire again. You notice that the grouping is actually wider regardless. The difference though is that you can see that the grouping is close, it's still tight. Obviously you're not going to be effective at like super far ranges. Like it'll take a little bit more burst, sometimes you'll get lucky and get a headshot. But it's a lot more random at range, whereas close up, you're almost guaranteed headshots. Like it's, especially if you have an aim point, like a dot, that makes it a lot easier to see exactly where the bullet's going to land initially. It's really easy to kind of just be running, come up on a target and just, you know, spray. You can actually almost just hold the trigger down because the rounds are going to go right where it's pointing initially. And even though there's a spread, that spread is really, like, a lot of rounds are going to be landing in basically the face region, which is kind of like, you know, important to basically acquire a headshot. Now, headshots aren't too difficult to acquire in this game. So, I mean, it's not like, you know, it's super, super difficult. The thing about the saw is that it's a lot easier to just kind of maintain a volume of fire that supersedes pretty much anyone else's weapons, and they can't counter it. Like, it's, I mean, you obviously can't counter it, but if you're being smart and tap firing like that, and even just firing bursts, it just don't move, first of all, which is kind of an important thing. Like, when I'm playing with the M249, I'll be running, I'll see a target, I'll stop, engage, shoot, you know, and then shoot, and then move, stop, engage. Like, a lot of people will make the mistake of kind of just like, you know, shooting and moving like this, which can still be decently effective within close range, but it doesn't compare to like, you know, that's a lot faster than trying to like move and engage targets. And you'll actually see as I demonstrate on the back of this wall over here, that there's a difference. Like if I'm sitting here tap firing, there's the grouping size, but if I'm moving, I'm just gonna walk backwards and forwards. You can see that the grouping is a lot bigger because for some reason bullets can feel the intense effects of the wind as you walk back and forth strong enough to completely alter the path of the bullet. I don't know, that's my bullshit hypothesis for why bullets deviate so drastically in pretty much any game ever, especially when you're walking like this. I mean, when your sights are pointing forward, which doesn't make any sense. But if you're not moving, it's a lot tighter. So it's really that simple. You can fire kind of quick bursts as well, but they're never going to be as tight as just, you know, tap firing. So that's literally that. It's that easy to control recoil and bullet deviation. It's just knowing that every weapon has a predetermined recoil pattern, but it won't even matter because you shouldn't even let the weapon get to the point where it's going to climb to the top of that recoil pattern. Like, you know, I shouldn't be firing it to the point where it's up here. You know, like that should, not even close, you know, it should be initially just, unless I'm within close range, you know, if I'm like here and I see a target come up, I could just kind of spray like that, because I'm so close, it doesn't make a difference. But ultimately at range, especially with an M249, because this thing is vicious even at range, I've taken out snipers with this thing, like pretty reliably. I mean, it takes a little bit more effort and a lot more rounds, and sometimes you won't get lucky enough in time by the time they actually manage to get a round off and hit you and kill you. But I mean, it's still effective when you're tap firing, as you can see. It's like, it's still a reliable weapon. Not gonna be as accurate as a, like, you know, a rifle. A submachine gun even suffers from the same accuracy issues as a light machine gun. But the point is, it can be done. And if you're smart enough and you're repositioning yourself constantly behind cover and coming back up and re-engaging, you can definitely help your chances when you're actually engaging somebody like that's actually equipped with a sniper rifle, which is a pretty big threat at range, like, admittedly. I mean, some sniper rifles could be equipped to the point that they're one-shot kills, which to me is ridiculous. Like, when it happens to me, I'm just like, I have a full, you know, full health, get shot, and like, it's one bullet and I'm dead, and it's just like, I was shot in like the foot or like the leg or something, and it's just like, or even just a chest, and it's kind of annoying when it happens. You're like, alright, okay, I see how it is, you know, just one bullet and it's all it takes. So it makes it really hard to actually try to fight those snipers, because you don't have that buffer of being able to absorb one round while you can just try to overwhelm him with a volume of fire. But anyway, that's the simple basics of recoil management and bullet deviation. Every single weapon, like, I'll go ahead and just show off the Saboro C30 for a second, just to finally finish off this video, because why not? But you'll see that this has a different recoil pattern to both those weapons. Big difference, right? Climb straight up, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. So it's a little bit more stable in its actual, like, climb. It'll kind of go up like this, right, left. Very stable in its recoil pattern. Of course, it also has the tightest, from the weapons I've used, it has the absolute tightest grouping when it comes to tap firing. Like, it's so freaking accurate. Like, that grouping is insane. I mean, look at that. And if you're walking, it kind of mimics almost what the M249 can do. It's a little bit wider than the M249, but I mean, you can see that while I'm moving, it's still a pretty accurate grouping. Which means that I could be like, you know, strafing to the left, strafing to the right, and just get pretty accurate shots off. A lot of it's also luck, because random bullet deviation, it's a factor that's random, you cannot control it, so it's kind of just like, you hope for the best, basically. But obviously being stationary is, you know, the ultimate way to make sure that your bullets are going to go absolutely straight every single time. And if you fire in long bursts, you can see it's still just as accurate. Obviously a little bit of a bigger grouping, that's to be expected, because nothing can be as accurate as just tap firing. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up the video, guys. Thank you guys for joining me today. My name's PepperBelly, and I will see you guys on the next one.